Hello, Internet. It's Daniel with Driving Dragons, and I'm back with another reaction video today. This time, going over to Seth Skorkowski to take a look at Power. Now, obviously, Seth is one of the most prolific YouTubers in the tabletop role-playing game space. His content is infinitely useful, and it's one of those situations where there's not really much on his channel that I don't actively enjoy, and there's very little I don't agree with, or very little that I have any issue with. So we're going to go ahead and hop over and see what he has to say about power gamers, and from there we'll see what I have to say about that.
Hello, Internet. Seth Skorkowski, and over the years I've done videos over various types of problem players or player behavior. One type of problem player that viewers have requested that I cover is the power gamer. Your player who wants to be the toughest, the fastest, most armored, and damage-dealing badass there is, which throws off the whole balance of the game, because they don't care for roleplay. All they want to do is kill the monster, take its items, get the XPs, gain more levels to kill bigger and bigger monsters, like they're playing some sort of video game. So after countless requests for my scathing opinion of them, we are finally here. And I gotta admit, I don't think power gamers are bad.
Yeah, I kind of agree with him right there off the bat. Power gamers are not bad. Power gamers can be bad, and really power gaming can be a bad behavior depending on execution, level it goes to, and some of the other problems that come with it. I would say that the biggest problem with power gaming, so to speak, is that it lends itself to dancing in the gray area with other, what I would call problem characters. And it can be a little bit of a pain in the ass for the GM if you're in a group where most of them are not power gamers.
It's true. In fact, I think the term power gamer has been reinterpreted and redefined, muddied and confused so many times over the decades that a lot of things that get called power gaming isn't power gaming. They might be traits that power gamers are known for, but they themselves aren't what make a power gamer, or even things that are exclusive to power gamers. So what I'm going to do is go through these, break them down, and show what I consider a power gamer to be, as well as some goofy skits and then some negative play styles that power gamers might be inclined to fall into. The first area is min-maxers or optimizers. These are your players who get the most out of their characters, the most maximums and bonuses, and the minimums of negatives. They're optimizing their character for maximum effectiveness. So you guys got your characters ready? You know it. I'm going to play an elven archer, so I went ahead and I stuck my 18 that I rolled onto dex, because that +2 that I get for being an elf knocks my dex up to a 20. Nice. Min-maxing. You power gamers are just so predictable.
I kind of disagree here. All right. And this is why I disagree. I think he has the wrong definition of min-maxing in this case. Min-maxing is not just maximizing your benefits. It's actually not maximizing your benefits and minimizing your drawbacks. That's not really what min-maxing actually is. What he's describing is optimizing. Optimizing is trying to find the absolute most advantageous way to build a character. Min-maxing is when you basically take the minimum in one thing in order to get the maximum in the other. So for instance, not in a I've rolled my stats and I'm going to arrange them where I need them kind of way, but like say you're in a point buy system, I'm going to sell off and have like a -5 charisma. Like my charisma is going to be like 2 in order for me to drive a bunch of points in to get a 22 dex. And not only that, but I've got like a 26 dex. How do you have a 26 dex? Well, basically everything except Constitution and Dex is horrible minuses. I'm terribly weak. I'm stupid and can't figure anything out. I'm painfully unobservant, and I have the social graces of a fart in church. But when it comes to Dex, man, you can't hit me, and I never miss. And I use Dex-based weapons to do that. That's min-maxing. Min-maxing is minimizing things in order to maximize others. And I guess you could say in a let's say you have a rolled statistics or rolled attributes situation, min-maxing wouldn't be, oh, I'm putting my best score over here in dexterity so that I have a really awesome dexterity score, even though I'm not going to be able to say use the +2 to dex to balance out a lower roll. It's, I have a goal in mind to my character. I'm going to be a high damage character, high critical hit character. So I'm going strength, I'm going dex, I'm going, I'm looking ahead to figure out where I'm going to be able to get the most feats, the most abilities, and use the best equipment for those specific purposes. Even if it means now I have the elven archer who can't see anything because I had to put an 8 in wisdom because I did everything else to optimize. That's the difference between min-maxing and just optimizing. And I believe what he's showing here is optimization, not really min-maxing.
Why? What have you got? I'm going to play a wizard, but I stuck as 18 in wisdom, and as intelligence, it's just an 8. It makes them much more well-rounded and interesting. Well, I'm happy that I optimized my character because your character is not going to be able to protect him. Also, you're going to be grateful that I optimized my archer because they're going to keep your crappy wizard alive. I enjoy interesting characters. I enjoy twists on classic tropes. If you want to make a rogue with a charisma as your highest stat instead of dex because you want to be a con artist like Locke Lamora, then awesome, let's do it. If you want to have a super ripped spellcaster, then great. However, I also want capable characters who are good at whatever it is they're supposed to be good at. Also, having a suboptimal character does not equal role play. It doesn't make you a better role player if your character isn't really good at something. A lot of people seem to think that hamstringing their character is some sort of easy hack to role play. It's not. It's just impairing your character. Role playing is a completely separate thing.
It's kind of funny he points this out because, oh, a suboptimal character doesn't just make you role play. This plays so very heavily into the stupidity of the modern gamer, because they all follow that same just ridiculous, stupid concept of, you're not disabled, you're differently abled. So it's like, just because, you should be able to do everything that anybody can do. You're 5 foot tall, you can be an NBA superstar. It's highly likely for you to be an NBA superstar at 5 foot tall. As a matter of fact, that makes you a more interesting NBA superstar that you're only 5 feet tall. Or, oh, you're going to be a Victoria's Secret model and you weigh 400 pounds and do nothing but eat ho-hos. Everything is successful regardless. You just have a different thing, a different of opinion. Oh, you have an IQ of 80, you're going to be an astrophysicist. Probably not. Almost definitely not. And there's 2 reasons why this is really stupid in a role-playing game sense. 3 reasons, actually. Let's do 3 reasons. Let's do an in-game reason. You're an 8 dex archer in Dungeons and Dragons. You can't hit anything. Who is going to go recruit into their adventuring party the archer who can pull back the +10 super mighty bow with his 18 strength, but can't hit the broadside of a barn? And they don't just say, hey, look, dude, archery probably isn't your thing. Here's an axe. Go hit stuff. Who's going to put up with the guy who is just constantly letting everybody down? There's an in-game reason. All right, here's a more character-driven reason. Oh, it's an interesting character. Why? Because your character's an idiot? Your characters decided to dedicate their life to something that they are truly bad at, as opposed to dedicating their life to something they are truly good at. If you are a terrible artist and you try to dedicate your life to being a professional artist, you're just going to starve to death, because you may love art and you may love drawing, but you're terrible at it. And ain't nobody paying for it. And sure as hell ain't nobody recruiting you to be the great artist for their massive campaign when you ain't no good at drawing. So it doesn't make sense for you to have a wizard with an 8 intelligence who literally can't cast half of the damn spells. And it's not. That's a crutch is what that is. my character is instantly interesting because he's not what he's supposed to do. If anything, that's bad role play. It's not just overcoming. You can say, hey, I'm going to overcome something, but it needs to be something that makes at least some modicum of sense there.
To watch my video on traveler character creation, I suggest choosing what career you want your character to pursue, looking at what attributes are used for qualification, survival, and advancement, and then placing your highest ability scores in those specific attributes. The reason is you want to give as much edge as you can to your character's chosen field. If you're going to play a basketball player, I'm going to recommend that your character be very tall. No one's going to walk up to an NBA player and accuse them of min-maxing for being 6'9". Their stats leaned toward their chosen field, giving them an advantage in
it. I didn't even. Jesus. There you go. Oops. Well, maybe kind of a great minds think alike type deal. But he is kind of putting a lot of his own thing. You're right. He's not min-maxing. He's just optimized. Just doing what you're good at. It's not min-maxing.
Your abnormally strong warrior or your super intelligent wizard, maybe the reason that those characters chose those professions is that they had a natural gift towards those careers. Now, I've said for years there is unhealthy extremes to min-maxing, and I believe the most recent video that I talked about that was my level versus skill-based games video, where I talked about one-trick ponies, where a character has so hyper-focused their character to the point that they can only do one single thing very well, leaving them incapable at everything else. Whether that be swinging an axe or driving a car really good or hacking a mainframe, whatever it is their specialty is. Problem is that RPGs regularly require an assortment of character skills and abilities, and the one-trick pony often becomes bored or is just useless or even a detriment because they've limited themselves too much to a specific area. Their toolbox is only hammers, while the problems they face are far more than nails. Then on the other side of the extreme is the painfully average, which is when a player is too afraid of having any minuses that they've spread all their skills and abilities out so thin across everything that they're now equally bad at everything with no specialty. They excel at nothing. They've gone to the extreme on the min side of min-max. Now, both of those are things that are far more prevalent in skill-based games than you're going to have in level-based games, and usually just older skill-based games. I can't think of a single modern or current edition where either of those extremes are really possible to do anymore, at least not like they used to be. Newer games tend to have built-in mechanics to tone those extremes down, but I do want to acknowledge or at least remind everyone that yes, there are extremes, but those are really just your outliers. That's not the same thing at all as giving your character a high strength, your warrior a high strength, or your pilot a higher reflexes. They don't need to be the character's highest stats, but they should be high enough to make that character excel in whatever their chosen area of expertise is. Another complaint that I often hear is that power gamers don't role play. There's no room for all that and all the combat that they want. Once again, I disagree. In my experience, power gamers often skew towards the non-role players or have a lower threshold of role play before they start getting bored. However, that's not the case for all of them. I've known some fantastic role players who are power gamers. Again, just because your character is optimized doesn't make you a bad role player. It's no more than making an extremely weak character makes you a good role player. If a player is naturally inclined to favor power gaming as their play style and not heavy role play, forcing that player to not optimize their character isn't going to suddenly make them heavy role players or even enjoy role playing. Next, and this is the
before he gets into his next thing, and I hope it's not just more about this kind of thing here. That's absolutely true. One is not necessarily the other. Just because you are a power gamer of some flavor does not make you not a role player. For one, who's to say a role play? Maybe my role is fighter. Maybe my role is powerful fighter, greatest fighter in the world, world traveling swordsman. And it makes sense for me to be highly optimized as a swordsman. And that plays into my role playing and flavors my role playing. It makes my character stand out and distinct. I can make my character stand out and be distinct because he's an archer that can pick a gnat off of somebody's nose at 500 paces, just like you can do it by putting some kind of goofy wart on his face and making him, dance the jig every time he walks into town, or, have a weird tick or some other, non-game rules related role-playing thing that you have decided to put into your character. It's just kind of Your character's attribute, just like your attributes as a human being, are an integral part of who you are and how you come across to others. Your stats are an integral part. Can't speak today. Of your character's character. Raistlin is Raistlin, not just because he's a wizard with an attitude. Raistlin is Raistlin because he has a shit constitution score. Raistlin is Raistlin because his intelligence is off the charts. And Raistlin is Raistlin because he also has an uncanny dex. And all of those things, he has a very high dex score as well. All of those things play in to the little idiosyncrasies and the little things that make Raistlin Raistlin and not just an average everyday evil wizard. And those are directly related to his stats. And you could argue that Raistlin Masheray is a min-maxed character where he put this really terrible score into Constitution and really terrible score into Strength and a really low score into Charisma in order to have this jacked up dex and this jacked up intelligence to make a super wizard. You could argue that, but he still has more depth and more character and more flavor to him than 90% of the quote pure role-playing characters that I've seen come across tables.
Weirdest one to say aloud. I can't believe I have to say this. Power gamers know and use the rules. And if you won't hand it over, we're going to take it ourselves. And with that, the two mobsters pull shotguns out from under their coats. Dweebles, you've got initiative, so what do? I'm going to run back to the car, crouch behind it, and draw my pistol. Okay, Todd, you're next. I'm going to drop prone and fire 3 pistol shots at the mobster on the left. Okay, well, taking more than 1 shot around with a pistol gives you a penalty die to each of those shots. Except I'm prone, which grants a bonus die, so it just cancels out. It does? Yup, page 128. And I hit with 2 for 7 and 11, so 18 points of damage. Okay, well, then he falls dead, but the other mobster raises his shotgun at you, and remember he's got a penalty die because I'm a prone target. Wait, really? Yup, page 128 of the combat section. Okay, then, he misses you, but then runs your direction, making it almost to you. Dweebles, it's your turn again. What do? I shoot my pistol and I miss. How close is he? Is he at 15 feet or less? Yeah, he's like a dozen feet away. Sweet, then I'm going to get a point blank bonus in addition to my prone bonus. That gives me a double bonus die on this. So I'm going to take a single shot with a double bonus. And I got an impaling strike for 19 points of damage. And he's dead. Dude, you are such a power gamer. But I'm just following the rules out of the book. Okay, so we have a player who's made themselves familiar with the rules of the game and has strategized off using those rules. Awesome. I love it when players learn the rules to the game. However, a shocking number of players who learn the rules, the same rules that everyone else is getting to use, get called power gamers because they're using them effectively, and I don't know what the hell that's about. I mean, I can only assume that this is a thinly veiled jealousy from the players and the game masters who haven't learned the rules. And instead of going, great job learning the game that we're all playing, you know the rules better than me, they just throw out the accusation that the player is a power gamer and was doing something wrong by using the rules. I want my players to use the rules to the game and use them tactically, not just for combat, but for everything, even social encounters. I'm not talking about those weird loopholes or exploits that some players might go for. I'm talking about the rules in the game as intended by the spirit of the rules. And I pray to have these players at my table. I'm a tactically thinking player myself, so I enjoy having that in my group because I know how to prepare for that. I know how to write games and use that if my players are tactically thinking as well. However, because we are busting some myths here, I'm going to be honest in saying that while good power gamers are going to use the rules and build strategies off them, not all power gamers know the rules.
Yeah, and I think he's about to get into that. Knowing the rules does not make you a power gamer. And I know this is not new. It's not like this is a brand new thing for accusing of power gaming, but I think it's a lot more prevalent now because we have the World of Warcraft video game mentality that's become pervasive in the hobby. And because of that, what you've ended up with is when people think of somebody who really knows the rules and dug into the book and found those situational bonuses and everything, they immediately think of that guy who basically knows how the game is coded in an MMO and knows has done all the math through all the levels to find out the correct stack to have that character that does 5 DPS more than the next best thing, or has the super stack to get that one giant burst, and this burst is so high that it literally will kill anything in one shot because they've calculated out everything's max hit points and the minimum damage for this particular tactic and the optimal time, and you do this in 5 seconds, this in 4 seconds, that kind of BS that you find in these video gamers with no life who want to be the Korean the super StarCraft power gamer type people. I just use the term power gamer myself. They equate a dedicated role player or a dedicated TTRPG player who just took the time to find out how all their shit works, and they equate it back to the guy who has 19 monitors around his computer and smells like Cheeto dust and does nothing but look into the deep code of the new patch to World of Warcraft so that he can, have a heavy lisp, and as his acne pops on its own, runs down his face in his mom's basement, he can talk about how he has 0.75 DPS more than, the next best rogue on the server.
I have had some very memorable ones who didn't. And trust me, power gamers who refuse to learn the rules are absolutely maddening. It's like they have total confidence in the subject that they clearly never bothered to understand. It's like the embodiment of the internet at your gaming table. Next, power gamers try to steal the spotlight from everyone. This is a player behavior I call the glory hound. The player who has to be the toughest, fastest, be the one who gets the most kills or lands that final killing blow on the bad guy, make the best joke around the table, and overall try to be the star of the show without considering the rest of the table's enjoyment. Glory hounds are annoying, and not just for the other players, they're annoying for the game master as well. And while yes, power gamers certainly can be glory hounds, there's no denying that there, I don't see them as having a monopoly on that behavior. I've watched the supreme actor role player do it just as much, and it's bad no matter who does that behavior. However, if you do have that one player who has optimized their character for combat, now they have a higher chance of hitting an opponent and they can do more damage than everybody else, and everybody's fighting a group of bad guys and they're slowly chipping them away. And meanwhile, you got the power gamer who's just one-shotting their way through them. Often the rest of the table misidentifies this exceptionally capable character as being a glory hound when they're not being a glory hound. It's just like the player knowing the rules better than everyone else. Instead of reflecting on all that, the rest of the table just declares that that one player is doing something wrong, when it's more to do with the players having different priorities and preferences.
Yeah, he's kind of dancing around this. He's close to what I would say is the correct situation. When I look at this particular power gaming situation here, they're the unintentional glory hound. Okay, that's what I would call it. The unintentional glory hound. How are they the unintentional glory hound? Because they're not trying to steal the spotlight. They're not trying to take away everybody else's time in the sun. It's just that when everybody else is chipping away 5%, 10% damage when they land a hit and is hitting 2/3 of the time, that's still not bad. You're gonna get through about 5 or 6 rounds of combat, and everybody's gonna have some hits and misses. But then the power gamer is knocking off 50%, 60% HP with one hit and is never missing. You get the situation where it's like, okay, you nick the guy, and you just barely dodge his thrust, and your your parry repost slips and cuts a line across his cheek, and scarring his smug face. And then Phil steps in and just splits him in half with an axe like a log, and he had no chance. And again, it's kind of anticlimactic, but it's just not glory hound behavior. It's just unintentional glory hound behavior.
In the game. And the final claim for power gamers is power gamers are all murder hobos. I've talked about murder hobos in a dedicated video. There's no need to repeat all that stuff here. You can watch that video if you want to know more. This is the one that I do find to be the closest to the truth here. Power gamers do seem to have a higher proclivity for going murder hobo on you if the game isn't meeting whatever their expectations are. And like with glory hounds, not all murder hobos are power gamers, and not all power gamers are murder hobos. But in my experience here, there's much more overlap on the Venn diagram between the two. Alrighty, so now that we've covered what power gamers aren't, or at least what they aren't always, let's talk about what
I wouldn't say that power gamers are necessarily more often murder hobos than other characters per se. It's just because since they're optimized for combat, a lot of times combat's going to be the solution. And it's not, oh, I'm a murder hobo and I'm always rushing to draw my sword or pull my pistol on somebody. But it's, if there's 10 ways to solve this problem, one of which is violence, and what I am optimized for is violence, I can very quickly recognize why. I can very quickly recognize this. I'm not going to solve this problem without violence. So why am I going to go through the other 9 options instead of just drawing my pistol and taking care of it? Once again, now I'm not a murder hobo, I'm just kind of a role player. I'm a role player who understands his strengths and weaknesses.
what they are, or at least how I personally define them. To me, power gamers are focused primarily on combat, while players, might focus their characters towards, optimal social skills or optimal stealth. Power gamers focus towards lethality. They want the best armor, the best ability to avoid being hit. They want the most or the coolest damage output, whether that be a flurry of blows or a single devastating strike that no one could survive. Their goal is they want to survive victorious and crush their enemies, which is not a bad goal to have, if we're being honest. That is their priority. It's what those players enjoy, and all other aspects are secondary to having a powerful, badass character. And come on, that's not that bad at all. I mean, who the hell wouldn't enjoy beating the crap out of this giant here? I mean, that feels awesome. And if you have a whole table of power gamers, you're going to be hard pressed to find a group that's going to have more fun than these people will. The problem with power gamers happens when the rest of the table has one priority, such as role-playing or exploration or investigation, and then that one player has the priority of having a powerful combat-focused character.
Okay, I'm obviously going to go back or continue here and respond to his specific definition and his specific criticism going forward. I do have a different definition, a much different definition of power gamer than Seth does here. To me, a power gamer, it doesn't have to be combat. A power gamer is somebody who is game rules focused, game mechanics optimized, whether it's for role play, whether it's for investigation and exploration, whether it's for combat. So, for instance, a power gaming rogue, a rogue power gamer, could be somebody who is built with super high dex, with super high sneak attack focused things, with all of his abilities and everything geared towards maximizing his sneak attack damage and giving him the most chances to have sneak attacks and giving him the most opportunities to use it with the least trade-off and get extra sneak attacks. It'd be that combat super rogue, that backstabbing machine, or an optimized rogue, maybe something that's not very good at combat at all. I mean, he's okay. He's got sneak attack. He's got, a few extra things. I mean, maybe he's got extra opportunity attacks or something that come from some of his natural rogue-like abilities. But really what he is he is the master who can pick every single lock in the universe. He is there are no traps for him. He never misses a trap. He can disarm anything. Everything is like that for him. He can use any kind of device and figure out any kind of puzzle. He is the master thief. He is silent. When he hides, he disappears. He can wear a black suit in a white room and disappear. That is, to me, just as much a power gamer as that super high combat rogue. But obviously, with Seth, it's all about combat and killing to be a power gamer. So let's see what he is, where we find our common ground.
And it's really just a compatibility issue, and I've talked about that before in previous videos. There is nothing wrong with how they enjoy RPGs. Power gaming isn't some sort of dirty word. It simply means that what they enjoy may or may not be compatible with whatever the rest of the table's priorities are. Now, that being said, I don't play with power gamers that much. It rarely works out for us. I enjoy roleplay and investigation. I enjoy highly lethal, skill-based games that don't have character levels. So power gamer play styles don't really mesh that well with my players and I. There was a time when I loved power fantasy and I loved power gaming, but that was many years ago for me. While I have no issues with power gamers outside of the basic compatibility between us, I want to talk about one type of power gamer that I just cannot stand. I already mentioned that power gamer who can't be bothered learning the rules of the game that they're playing, and that's maddening, no matter what type of.
Before he gets into this, and we'll see what he has to say about it, his one type. I think the compatibility issues are really a problem, but they're really a problem for the game master in a lot of ways. If you have one player who is hyper optimized for a specific type of challenge versus the rest of the party, what you end up with is a serious imbalance, a very serious balance issue when it comes to trying to put your campaign encounters together, regardless what the situation is. So, for instance, if you have the best gunfighter on the planet super optimized, when you get into a gunfight, they just dominate everything, because you either have a monster that wipe or opponents, enemies that just wipe everybody out because they're strong enough to challenge the gunslinging machine, or the gunslinger just mows them down and nothing is a challenge in a gunfight. And conversely, then you have the gunfighter who is a missing dead weight in other scenarios. Say you get into a situation where you can't use guns. Players go into a saloon and they take their guns at the door, but a bar fight breaks out and they're fighting with Bowie knives and smashing bottles over each other's heads. And you've got this gunfighter who is literally worthless without a handgun, because they've optimized so heavily, they've min-maxed their way into being a gunfighter, and they are just as useless. They're a combat-focused character who is just as useless as the bookworm or the lore, the priest character that has almost no combat ability. They're just as worthless as he is. Now you've unbalanced things, because the thing that is supposed to shore up the combat is not shoring it up anymore. And you end up in these wildly varying encounters where, if you're within their scope, you got to play the dangerous enough to challenge him, but not dangerous enough to wipe out the rest of the party game. And if he's outside their scope, or even worse, in an area that they neglected in order to maximize that side, now you have a situation where you have added dead weight to the rest of the party, and you have to make it easier for everybody else to make up for that character. And that also plays into the huge difference between a min-maxer and a truly optimized power gaming build. Because a truly optimized power gaming build is not going to be dead weight in these other situations, unless you're in a very extreme version, to the point where you've got to a really high level where really being the best matters. But in that case, you're leaning heavily on the high level or the high skill version of this other character anyway. When you get into min-maxing, this is where basically the better optimized the character is, the less it's a problem, because they're optimized, but they still can carry their weight in other situations. The more min-maxed the character is, or the more poorly optimized it is, the more unbalanced it is, and the more difficult it makes it for you to write encounters.
player it is if they refuse to learn the rules to the game. But what really drives me bats, and this is really just a rant here, so you made it this far, so here it is, are power cowards. These are power gamers who make their big, lethal power fantasy badass with the adamantium armor and the ultra sword and the plasma minigun, who can single-handedly deal more damage and hit points and armor than the rest of the party combined. They are the tank's tank, and they will gleefully chew through low-level bad guys who don't stand the slightest chance of hurting them. So you, as the game master, eventually want to give this character a bit of a challenge, right? Not just a cakewalk all the time. So you put up an opposition in response to the power gamer, hoping to give them a bit of a fun challenge while also playing a vital role for the party, because this one opponent, they're a serious threat to everybody, but the power gamer's the one that can probably take them out. Unfortunately, the power coward, the moment they realize that this isn't an opponent that they can just curb stomp without breaking a sweat, runs away, abandoning the party to a major threat that's now an even bigger threat because their powerful badasses left the building and left everybody else to die. As you're exploring the abandoned factory, a humming noise starts coming from the room beside you, and then a bunch of killbots come flying in. What do you do? Oh crap, my tech is pinned down and I've only got a medium pistol. My medic's gonna squeeze up beside him and shoot his SMG for 14 damage. Sparks dance off the lead one's armor, but it looks like only a little bit of damage got through. There's just too many of them. Don't worry, Micah's got that heavy machine gun with a grenade launcher. Mike, it's your turn now. Yeah, I'm getting the hell out of here and back to the transport. Now, this isn't a role-playing thing, like, oh, my character only pretends they're tough and they're really a fraidy cat. No, that would at least be interesting. No, the players that I'm referring to as power cowards, this is just how those players play the game. No matter what character or what system it is, this is their play style. And it is so disheartening when you see this in that second campaign, or when their second character comes in and you're deeply at hope that that first time was simply a fluke or maybe an attempt to role play, and you realize that no, this is just really how it is from now on. The last two power cowards that I had, and this is stretching back like 8 years here, so it's not like they're super common to have, but I figured it out before the rest of the players did. And even after I warned them not to rely on that player, it took them a little bit longer before the rest of the table realized it. Okay, since Mike is going to be our big damage dealer, I'm just going to have a lightly armored jumpsuit and a snub pistol. Yeah, you probably shouldn't rely on Mike for being your heavy. Nah, I think it's all good. Okay, because my last character got eaten by Skelecthian death frogs because Mike ran away, this character is going to have some hardened claim cell armor and carry a heavy assault laser. That's a good idea. And if you're trying for any sort of balanced combat, well, that is just completely out the window now, because the group is either insanely overpowered because the power coward is fighting beside them, or they're insanely underpowered because the power coward has abandoned them at the first hint of actual challenge.
Yeah, this is a much bigger issue, this power coward he brings up. And he's being very nice. And I think part of it's because he does kind of have some of those social leanings, it seems. Those more apologetic for bad behavior type leanings. Just it kind of seems. I don't want to peg him as one thing or another, but it kind of comes across that way at times from reading his Twitter and Facebook and such. This is very much kind of a modern gamer thing. Not saying it didn't happen before. It's definitely happened in the past, but this was a that guy thing. And we all know that guy. This was the neck beard, fedora wearing super nerd who lives vicariously through their character type behavior. And it's more important that their character's aura of invincibility is never, there's no dink in the patina of their invincibility, no chink in the armor of their supreme badassery. So they don't want challenges because they're living vicariously through this, and they don't even want the hint that there's something that could beat their character, because it is something that they have decided to prop up some real world part of their character on. That is usually where that kind of crap comes from. And the second they realize there's a challenge, they're instantly trying to find a way to circumvent it or get away from it without having to expend their resources. Because what they really want to do is they don't want to use their super badass mega missile launcher on something that calls for a super badass mega missile launcher. they want to use it on a group of street punks who have no fucking chance. So they can say, ha, 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 I blew up their car and all 9 of them with one shot. I'm such a badass. Everybody look at me. Where are all the girls that can hang off of my massive rippling biceps while I flex and grin at the camera? That's what they're living a vicarious power fantasy through it. That is a much bigger problem than their play style and their character creation and their min-maxing or power gaming or optimization or whatever it is they're doing. That is more along the lines of a serious issue you just don't want at your table anyway, because their personality, real life, is going to end up being a conflict too, as they start to be assholes to everybody in real life as well.
And it just drives me nuts. Hi, thanks for watching.
No, so that was the end of the video there. Not much there going on. Great stuff from Seth again. Definitely one of my favorite tabletop role-playing game YouTubers. And, actually, I mean, I really agree with the vast majority of what he had to say in there. The biggest difference is being I do have a difference. I have a broader scope of what I consider a power gamer. And I really think that min-maxing is like snap together model kit level of power gaming. It is like baby's first power gaming. It's very quickly left in the past and left behind once you really learn the game. And because min-maxing, any good optimizer will tell you, min-maxing doesn't actually work in any kind of long-term sense. It just leads to your character dying to simple challenges or, not being able to get past simple barriers because they're too overly slanted in an attempt to tip the scales and, break the code and exploit, if you will, to use some video game terminology. So what do you think? Is my definition right? Is his definition right? Who has the correct definition of a power gamer here? Is power gaming nothing but combat and nothing but action? Or does power gaming actually apply to all facets where you are using the rules and using the system to make sure your character uses the in-game mechanics to be exceptional at one or more things? Let me know in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe. See you guys next time.